Chapter 5. Tribunal. Enoch awoke from his fitful dream disoriented. The faint memories of strange voices, lights, and visions of a garden with glowing men dissipated rapidly as he looked around and tried to gain his bearings. He heard the sound of rushing water nearby. He looked up through the treetops and saw jagged rocks of the gray stony surface stretching upward. Oh yes, he remembered. The cliffs of Avalon Forest. The sky was filled with the soft orange glow of sun's birth. But how did I get down here? Praise the light! The stranger must have led me through the cave, which led to the bottom of the cliff, stuffed to the brim with alru, and quickly made his way towards the sound of heaven's tears flowing. It was sun's birth, and if he made good time, he could be back at the Tribunal camp by Sun's Peak. Enoch washed quickly in the cool waters, never taking his eyes off the bundle of precious leaves. I could have sworn that I dropped my pack in the cave. He shuddered at the memory of the black winding tunnel and once again thought of the stranger. Perhaps I'll find him on the way back and can thank him properly. He might even be at the tribunal. It was typical to meet unknown relatives and tribesmen at the annual celebration. The sons of Adam and the daughters of Eve were numerous now. Only the wise deity who healed could recite the generations and offspring. The others were too busy in the fields and with the Seti life to pay attention to such matters. Life was hard in the plains. The constant work of searching for food and the preparations of shelters for the Seti left little time for anything that would not satisfy the hunger and basic needs. Enoch looked forward to returning. He increased his pace with the thought of the tales that would begin at sunsleep. The story of Father Adam and Mother Eve in the garden, the tale of the speaking serpent who deceived Mother Eve, the mysterious cave of hidden treasures, the birth of the first fruit of their loins, Cain and Abel. He stopped with that one. Tempers always flared as the tribe's people honored Abel with the retelling of his favor with the Ancient One and Father Cain's rage. The dissension Cain created with his murderous act was still a source of tension among all the sons of Adam, even though 6 generations had passed since Abel. The tribe of Seth and the tribe of Cain were mistrustful of one another. Only their dependence on each other and their common belief in the prophecy prevented total separation. Ironically, the gifts given to Father Adam by the Ancient One had been divided evenly between the two distinct groups. Many of the people of the tribe of Seth still possessed some access to the one mind, but lacked the physical strength and cunning of Cain's offspring. With the rebellion among the beasts and the difficulties of survival growing stronger each day, they needed both. Enoch remembered Tubal-Cain's offer to work together with a bitter laugh. His cousin's treachery in the woods had all but ended that to himself ruefully. A shared rulership would be best. It would unite the families once again, and all of Cain's offspring didn't show the violence and disregard for the Ancient One. Like Naamah, he contemplated, as he ran swiftly, now leaving behind the shade of the woods and stretching out as fast as a gazelle in the plains. Tubal-Cain's beautiful sister Naamah was the loveliest of all the daughters of Eve, even more beautiful than Awan, Eve's first woman child. She possessed a gentle and sweet nature too, so unlike her forceful brother. He might have pursued a union with Naamah, but the elders of Seth discouraged marriages with the offspring of Cain because of his sin. So he chose a good woman of Seth's lineage. Adnah had made a fine wife. She was full of life and laughter, and her training as a Medici made her indispensable. Many a day she had soothed his tired, aching limbs with one of her fragrant baths, with just a hint of alru. Thudum, 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 thudum. The ground beneath his feet rumbled. Enough, he silently commanded himself. The comforts of home can wait. I must focus. Enoch zipped past the familiar rolling hills leading to the tribunal Seti, where all the families raised his limbs as the sack full of alru knocked rhythmically against his back, keeping time with his light, rapid footsteps. There it was again. Thump, 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 thump. I know that sound. Horses. They were coming from the rear at full speed. Enoch risked a quick glance behind him. Praise the light! Enoch slowed slightly in disbelief as he saw the unmistakable figure of Tubal-Cain on horseback, and he wasn't alone. I hope there's still time. Enoch faced forward again and threw his head back as he tried to put everything out of his mind. The challenge, the alien ones waiting for the Alru, even his own desire to just one thing, running. With each step, the faces of his people and their hopes for deliverance returned with force. Thump, 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 thump. He could see it. The fence surrounding the compound beckoned. Did I prevail? Am I the next bearer of the seed? His heart pounded as if his chest would explode. He could just make out the worn covering of the tents, and if his chest would explode, he could just make out the worn covering of the tents and the brightly hued red and purple tops of the elders' dwellings. A young boy of no more than 30 years ran up the lookout post, displaying the distinctive banners of all the families. He grabbed one of the banners, held it high, and waved it in large arcs. Every lion whipped and snapped in the scout's hands. It was the banner of Seth. Hot tears of relief poured down his sweaty, flushed cheeks as the scout blew the horn of triumph. Enoch had won. Semjaza trailed Tubal-Cain at a brisk pace as they traveled through the southern plains of Eden towards the Tribunal compound, or Seti, as it was called in the tongue of Adam. He allowed Tubal-Cain to lead, even though he could have easily overtaken him, and the other watchers followed his example, riding fast, but staying a respectable distance behind. Semjaza was a skilled leader, a method of travel, because it gave him a chance to think. The light of the midday sun blazed on his brow as steadily as his thoughts. Now how shall I bring up a very delicate subject without causing alarm? Semjaza wasn't nearly as irritated with Azazel and Amezrek as he had led them to believe. In fact, he appreciated the timing of their impetuousness. It gave him the perfect opportunity to do a little investigation of his own. Without their blunder, he would never have had a reason to approach the sons of Adam at all. Neshtu, Neshtu, cooed Semjaza in the horse's ear as he gripped the mane of his steed tightly, slowing him down a bit. Could it be true that the Ancient One had created these lowly beings to rule not only the earth, but also the heavens one day? Since he'd been assigned to Adam's realm to observe and guard these creatures against the fallen, he had more encounters with the exiled servants of Lucifer than he'd ever had in heaven's realm. Just a few months ago in the humans' time, the great leader had even approached him personally. Semjaza had been on his post at Mount Arata as usual, and he had just dispersed the companies of watchers under his command to their posts throughout Adam's realm, honored by the unexpected visitation, even though the great leader was no longer in the good graces of the Ancient One, and Semjaza was only a captain. No one of his rank would dare to approach even an ex-member of the High Council without invitation, especially not Lord Lucifer, who'd also held the office of covering cherub. Even so, he planned to ignore him as instructed, but Lucifer had said something that caught his attention. It was an intriguing question, really, absurdity indeed, yet Semjaza conceded thoughtfully while he watched. Tubal-Cain charged further ahead. He might have a point that deserved. As Semjaza rode forward, the memories of that conversation pounded his conscience like nails through a soft beam. Why do you suppose the Ancient One has not granted us offspring? The great leader asked, almost rhetorically. The men of flesh produce children after their own likeness, just as the Ancient One does. Yet, fire and spirit have none, although we are fully equipped to do so. Even as we speak, some son of Adam is reproducing through his helpmeet, another pleasure we are to be denied, might I add. Soon they will populate this entire realm. Then what? Shall this lowly life form become greater than we sons of God, who were from the beginning? Captain Semjaza, you are a reasonable man. Consider my point. I have committed no great crime other than to state what is obviously true. I have only the highest regard for the Ancient One. I only wish he regarded us enough to give us freedom as he has the humans. Perhaps the Ancient One is afraid of our freedom. In retrospect, Semjaza was embarrassed at his lack of a response. He hadn't even tried to defend his father. The Ancient One afraid? Never. Complete absurdity. He would never withhold any good thing from us, would he? Would we be allowed to have children too at the right point and with a comparable companion such as the woman? if that was necessary. Of course we would. Simjaza had put the ridiculous idea completely out of his mind until last night. Were indeed compatible with these creatures of the dust. It just might work. They could redeem the humans and fulfill their desire to procreate. Maybe this was the will of the Ancient One. Peva, Peva! Simjaza spoke briskly into his mount's ear, loosening his grip on the long white mane a few lengths ahead. There is only one way to find out. Quick! Find cover, whispered Azam as he pointed to a small grove of trees nearby. Onami and Delmar followed him hastily to the hidden position and watched the men on horseback gallop through the entrance to the settee. Azam settled himself as comfortably as he could without poking himself with the gleaming sharp weapons hidden beneath his robe. Knives, daggers, swords, even tools for building were neatly arranged and strapped down by a series of colorful strings and cords so Azam could access any of them quickly with the simple strategic tug on the elaborately braided belt cinching his robe. Those who did not know him saw it as a mere decoration, an extravagance of an overzealous angel. Those who did know him knew better. Why, that looks like Simjaza and his men, whispered Onami. And what are the Watchers doing riding in plain sight of the humans? They could have special orders, I suppose, answered Delmar cautiously. They would have to have very special orders indeed to be so bold, responded Chief Captain Azam as he looked intently at Captain Simjaza, speaking with a distinguished man adorned with a golden sash and headdress. What is he saying, Azam? They are too far away. Even my keen hearing cannot pick it up at this distance. I could access the one mind to understand, but that would alert Simjaza. He is very adept at recognizing signatures. Yes, absolutely. Simjaza is a keen previous encounters with the captain of the Watchers. Why can't we just ask? Anami stared in surprise towards the branch Delmar had been sitting on. If he didn't know better, he would have sworn his friend had disappeared. Only two golden eyes that were changing colors rapidly could still be seen. His arms and limbs had taken on the colors and textures of the tree. I say, that is quite admirable, Delmar. Very creative. We don't want Simjaza to realize we are here, said Delmar as he pressed his back into the tree to complete the camouflage. Not just yet. Cheers and laughter drifted in and out nearly deaf ears as the old man made his way towards the commotion at the center of the settee. He wove through the intricate pattern of tents arranged in intertwining circles as complex and varied as the families. Tents of white represented the youngest family branches. The tans boasted at least 2 generations of offspring. The blues had seen 4 ages of children mature, while the reds and purples were reserved for the elders who had sojourned in the land of Edenia for 6 generations. Green ones signified the dwelling of a Medici. Every annual gatherings, all the Medici dwelt together with the folds of their rich emerald tents joined together as if forming a protective band around the golden inner circle of the Soka. Finally, he reached the 33 tents of gold reserved for the children of Mother Eve's womb. As he passed the tents of his brothers and sisters, billowing magnificently in the warm westerly breeze, he counted them all. Cain, Abel's tent stood empty. Azura, Awan, Jael, Elah. When he'd finished, he began recalling the first generations of sons and daughters. With each name came a memory, a child's laughing face, his wife Azura passing along the knowledge of essence to a naive girl selected for the Medici. His old habit used to invigorate him, remind him of the bravery and courage of his people and the promise to come. Now, it just made him feel old. Father Seth brushed back the loose stray bands of his pure silver mane, which fought to be free of the heavy headdress. Azura said the absence of color from his hair made his bronze, lineless face even more pleasing. I am an old man now, woman, he told her gruffly. But he knew she saw the smile he tried to. That woman did always know what to say. Now he was glad he had listened to Azura's sound advice regarding the most promising of his offspring. Enoch had been a wise choice. He'd considered the other firstborn sons, Enoch, Kenan, Mahalalel, and Jared, but Enoch was special. Even the Medici agreed that the youngest of the first was highly favored. Seth had seen their tribal banner flying and knew Enoch had returned. Surely he had the Alru too. The joyful sounds before him took on a different tone. Angry accusations pummeled his ears. The attending crowd was so enraptured by the scene in the heart of the Sete, they had not noticed Father Seth's arrival. Now the problem like wheat from chaff. "I demand an audience with the elders," shouted Tubal-Cain vehemently as he dismounted from the gray Mustang, still panting and sweating from the hard ride, and approached Enoch. "The Ancient One has favored me with a great revelation." "I have proof of the Ancient One's favor," said Enoch as he grasped a handful of Alru and held it in the air triumphantly for the curious onlookers to see. Another round of cheers went up at the mention of the Alru. "Dear cousin," said Tubal-Cain, raising his heavy baritone voice over the ruckus, "the Alru you have gathered will one day run out. Then what? Another dangerous trek to the Forbidden Lands? No. I swear by the Ancient One, I have found something better." "What could be better than Alru, Tubal-Cain? It is a gift from the Hidden Father, and you should be grateful that he has granted us more. Why sulk as Father Cain would? I have met the challenge justly. Will you not recognize that the Ancient One has chosen me as the next bearer? Cousin, you may have found the Alru. I'll grant you that. But I have discovered the fulfillment of the prophecy and a permanent cure for the sickness. These men will prove it," said Cain, as he waved his hands toward the impressive men waiting on their mounts behind him. "What do these?" Before Enoch could finish speaking, a great light filled the camp. It completely encompassed the light from the midday sun. It was as if someone had pulled the great light in the sky to the earth. Enoch drew back, taking in a sharp breath, while he threw his hands up over his eyes, dropping the Alru he'd held up in victory just moments before. The light was coming from the men on horseback. "There's something familiar about them, but I can't remember." The stunned silence of the tribesmen gave him a moment to think and adjust. Now he could see them clearly through their bright aura. They sat noble, majestic, and unyielding as they waited. Enoch saw some of the men and women began to bow down on their knees. "This is madness. I don't know who they are, but they are not." The tall man sitting on the white stallion at the head of the 18 or so men with him raised his hand. Immediately, the light began to dissipate as he effortlessly swung and walked towards Tubal-Cain at the center. At his approach, Tubal-Cain unconsciously stepped back, allowing the man in the fine robe to speak. "Greetings, brothers. I am Simjaza of the Elohim. Please do not bow to us, for we are not so unlike yourselves. We, too, serve the same Hidden Father as you. If you will grant us an audience with your elders, we can explain. We know of the curse invoked by your father, Adam and his wife Eve, and the prophecy the Ancient One has spoken. There is a way to overcome the curse and defeat the serpent, but we must work together if it is to happen at all." "We know not of your comings or goings, nor of your kind," said Father Seth firmly, effectively silencing the increasing whispers around him. "Yet it is the way of our people to listen before judging." Father Seth spoke slowly, emphasizing each word as he stared purposely at Enoch and Tubal-Cain and the other elders, whose headdresses of authority could now be clearly seen above the heads of the men, women, and children who had gathered to watch. "Please welcome our guests and provide for their needs." Seth's order sent several maidens with smooth, worn leather sashes tied about their waists, scurrying, while two young men, dressed in similar garb, appeared silently at the sides of Simjaza's men with buckets of fresh water and food for the horses. After you have been refreshed, Simjaza of the Elohim, the elders will hear. Our Sabasi will see to your needs and escort you to the circle of unity. "Your graciousness is welcome like the dew upon dry petals," replied Simjaza with an elegant nod of his head. At his cue, Azazel, Amezrek, and the others dismounted to follow the Sabasi to their accommodations. One of them, a dark-haired woman, approached Simjaza quietly and offered a cup of steaming liquid. Simjaza reached for the cup and was about to say a quick word of thanks to dismiss the servant girl when he stopped suddenly. No sound came from his lips as he, with a friendly yet aloof smile, it was the woman he had seen from the mount. "Why, she is even more beautiful up close. My far-sighted vision did not do her justice." Samjaza took the opportunity to study her discreetly while she and the other Sabasi worked nearby preparing a long wooden tray laden with fruits, vegetables, and freshly baked aladi cakes stuffed with figs. Samjaza made himself comfortable on the wooden logs neatly arranged in varying levels on the floor of the dwelling. Thinking again of his mission as he watched the young woman busy at her task, he leaned back onto one of the strategic cushions and raised his cup of bittersweet liquid to his companions. "May the prophecy be fulfilled," said Samjaza heartily. "May the prophecy be fulfilled."